Right, welcome back to another Code Talk. This time we're in real time because, well, due to technical issues like my drive running out of memory, the time-lapse footage got corrupted. And then, the next two times where I tried to record in real time in order to go over everything that I've done, yeah, that also got corrupted. So I've cleaned out my videos folder, moved it to the data drive that has more data storage. Compressed the raw footage of all the Maya campaign videos so far, which is for each episode about 2 hours. So yeah, it's a lot of space saved. So now I've got a lot more space. So, I think a few hundred megabytes available now, so it should not be a problem anymore. Anyway, we're doing North and Central America. Panama is about the same as it was historically. U.S. occupying the canal, Panama is not really able to do much about it. Some people are annoyed by this. Well, at least for the time being. If something goes wrong, like in Kaiserreich, where there's the American Civil War, Second American Civil War, yeah, Panama might have the opportunity to try taking the canal. It depends on how catastrophic something is. Next, there's Costa Rica, which, unlike, well, pretty much every other country in Central America, is actually pretty stable, peaceful, pretty democratic, although it has its own problems. Specifically, there's a high level of wealth disparity. Pretty much all the riches go to the rich folk. And there's also the fact that with politics, it's always the same, pretty much always the same group of politicians that are in power. Or at the very least the same ideology, centrist liberals. And so the people that are getting the short end of the stick, they aren't liking this, so the end result is that well, started setting up alternate political parties, both on the left and the right. Although, at the moment, that's all they've done so far, so it's still pretty stable and has a lot of room for improvement, but yeah. Next is Nicaragua, which is undergoing the aftermath of the recent occupation, U.S. occupation, which I will say was pretty justified, or at least uh, in hindsight justified, because they tried leading earlier in the 1920s, and then a couple months after they left, the two major political groups, the liberals and conservatives, started a civil war. So the end result is that the what was supposed to be the end of the occupation ended up being just a 9-month interlude. Yeah. Next, there's Honduras, which is surprising. Like Costa Rica, relatively stable. Unlike Costa Rica, it doesn't have a history for this, so no one believes this will last long, and it probably has to do with the economy improving because the U.S. economy is improving. Also, it happens to be the country that where the UFC happens to have the second strongest level of grip. There's a country that has an even stronger United Fruit Company. Yeah, probably best to add right here that due to the fact that the U.S. economy recovers much earlier, instead of waiting until the start of World War II, the U.S.'s entry into World War II, instead it happens around 1933, 1934. Yeah, the end result is that the United Fruit Company is more powerful than it was historically. Yeah, sorry. Eh, this means that Central America is actually slightly worse to live in, I guess. I mean, the economy of the area has also improved slightly, but it's probably going to end up the same way as Costa Rica. Most of the gains go to the rich. Right, then there's El Salvador, which has never had a democracy, at least not up to this point. And until 1931, they were ruled by a landowning oligarchy. Yeah, aristocratic republic. Sort of like Novgorod, actually. However, 1932, 1931, there was a military coup with an acting president to perpetuate. Yeah, beforehand they actually had an actual presidency, and in both cases they had elections. Just don't expect your vote to count for anything. Some of the peasants actually had hopes that this would improve things. Yeah, they were proven wrong. So, 1932, major peasant revolt, got crushed horrifically, or well, brutally. And, well, the anarchists in Russia are always happy to help someone that's fighting against what they see as a tyrannical government, which in this case is certainly true. So, they decided to send some aid, help them out in keeping things quiet. So, the peasants are slowly organizing themselves quietly in secret, waiting for an opportunity to rise up and improve things for themselves. All right, next there's Guatemala. Yeah, economically, things are not going well for them at all. Yeah, in order to boost coffee production in the uh, 1800s, so not that recently, they established what is pretty close to actual honest to God serfdom. So yeah, conditions actually got worse with time. And then when the Great Depression came along, this was not enough anymore. So, end result, starvation wages, forced labor, debt slavery, and finally, although this isn't 100% confirmed, but it would not surprise me if this were true, landowners have the authority to execute um, their workers, as a disciplinary action. Yeah, this is normally a term reserved for leftist discourse over regular wage labor, but in this case, it's pretty much justified unless you happen to be a um, perhaps a hardcore fascist or something. I don't know. This is also the country where the UFC has the largest amount of power. Yeah, fun times. So they're basically a vast portion of the economy of Guatemala. They also pay no taxes, and the country's under a dictatorship. This one is definitely going under one of the two countries that are starting as fascist. The other one's also a pretty bad place to live in, though I do not go into detail here quite as specifically. Anyway, next is Mexico. Skipping Belize because that's a UK colony at that point in time. I might do them later, but I have to think about it. Might have been a better idea not to skip them. I can handle them later. So Mexico is an interesting state where, well, the elections don't mean much as there's only one major party, and the government is highly centralized with a lot of dictatorial elements. And yet, so sounds a lot like communist vanguardism, doesn't it? And yet, this is the National Revolutionary Party, which is the party running the show, believes they can set up a liberal democracy in Mexico that is strong, stable, healthy, when given enough time to prepare the country for it. So, liberal vanguardism. Actually, rather similar to the KMT when I think about it. So, yeah, we have the Mexican KMT in power. As well as things are stabilizing slowly. Of course, some people think the liberal revolution has not gone far enough, but, well, yeah. Then there's Cuba, which, surprise, surprise, because the US happens to recover earlier, and Cuba goes through a highly unstable period, 1933, 1934, exactly during the time where the US happens to be recovering. Well, yeah, Cuba's in the under, third time under US occupation in the 1900s. Yeah. And the occupation is not helping matters, or at least not much. there's still a lot of infighting among Cuban groups, and some of it spills out to the occupation forces. Fun times. Oops, wait. I'll go to Haiti first. Sorry. Yeah, Haiti has basically a dictatorship. There really isn't that much interesting on Haiti that I could boil down to a single idea. I mean, I boil down pretty much everything there is into here into more than just one idea, so that's the best name I could come up with. Um, the they recently they were also under U.S. occupation until 1932-ish. Well, it was winding down since the late 1920s, and then the Great Depression happened, but still. Yeah, the current dictator actually got elected in a free and fair election. Big critic on the occupation, and then centralized power around himself, which is great, just great. Plus, the army was trained by the U.S. to be apolitical, and the dictator is perfectly willing to work with the U.S. so long as they don't overstep their bounds, which the U.S. is perfectly fine with. The U.S. supporting a dictatorship. Wow, how unprecedented. Then there's the Dominican Republic, the other one that starts fascist. Yeah, so once the current dictator got inaugurated in an election, he asked that the legislator proclaim it as the beginning of the era of Trujillo. Man, that guy's a narcissist. Yeah, he treats his party as a rubber stamp and uses the army as a means of um, quieting any opposition. And that's just on the political side. On the economic side, I mean, I don't remember much because in my research I was complaining a lot about this guy. One of these people historically said, I'm not sure if it was Guatemala or Dominican Republic. It might have been Guatemala, but one of these two compared himself to Hitler favorably on shooting first and asking questions later. And and he basically said it as if it were a positive thing. I do not like these people. And this might probably be making things worse, with the US recovering earlier so they can interfere more. Especially since they specifically support a lot of these dictators because they're kissing up to America just so that they can stay in power more easily. Because the rebels may not be pro-America, especially after America decides, they're not doing anything dangerous. Just leave them be. So, yeah. The Dominican Republic also has, at this point, a history in messing about with Haiti's politics. For example, trying to buy out officers of the Haitian army, massacring Haitians on the on the Dominican side of the border. Yeah. I mean, the U.S. would probably intervene if the Dominican Republic tried invading Haiti because they're both supported by the U.S. Surprise, surprise. And, well, it would not do to have, a stronger Dominican Republic when you can have just, two weaker countries on an island. Makes them easier to control. Anyway, Canada. If you have any idea how Canada, if you want to have a quick, succinct view, if you played TNO and read how Canada is at the beginning, it's a pretty close view of how Canada is, at least when it comes to internal matters. So, the Franco-British rivalry, having flared up again, means that the Quebecois see it as their national duty to become very, very uppity and rebellious. There's a lot of Quebecois terrorism going on. And yeah. Then, in the West, well, they're used to being autonomous and self-governing, and the central government is, well, centralizing and trying to use the new communication technologies in order to, well, better communicate. Like, I believe telephones were becoming a big thing at the time for, well, communication, so at least quick communication. Telegrams were still a thing too, and less costly. And still instantaneous, at least with regards to communication of the information, or at least as close to instantaneous as you can get. Light speed is a limit after all. And there's also the fact that you have to decode the Morse code, etc. But yeah, end result is an area that is being centralized that does not want to be centralized, especially involving things like taxes. And as I've mentioned before, Russian anarchists are happy to help anyone that's trying to fight a government. An oppressive government, at least by their standards, which applies to just about every government in the game outside of ones that follow anarchism, and a couple that follow socialism. Because, well, with anarchists, the idea is not to fight oppressive governments, but also to fight oppressive systems in general, and they view capitalism as oppressive. So, yeah. Some of them view markets in general as oppressive, some of them don't. Anyway, so they're sending a lot of aid to British Columbia, and that's making anarchism pretty popular there. There's also quite a bit of stock speculation going on because the US economy is doing better, at least it looks like it, and the stock market is doing great. Plus, the UK is busy sending quite a bit of aid to French rivals, Germany and Italy. So less money is there to spare for Canada, so this is a way to get a lot of money to flow in, especially among the richer folk that can afford a lot of stock, and some of the regular folk that have enough money to invest in stocks, basically the middle class. Of course, the stock market will eventually run into problems, so this is not sustainable. It will probably happen sooner rather than later, due to, if you remember Ghost Train Economy for the US, yeah, things look good, but they're not actually doing that well. So yeah, that's the ideas of pretty much most of the world. There's a couple things, some colonies of France and the UK, and a couple of, well, Italy, maybe Portugal. Although I figure I figure Portugal and Spain are somewhat more centralized with regards to the colonies. So, and then there's also the Chinese warlords that I haven't touched. I don't want to touch them until later. I need to get a better idea of what it looks over there because that is a complex mess of chaos where one little nudge can change the whole thing. Unlike with, say, Japan, where they already were pretty much railroaded from since the Meiji Restoration to go along the path that they're going. In this case, yeah. Anyway, so I made a world event of something that definitely is likely to happen in this timeline. Not certain to. Japan does have a choice on which direction to go. But, well, this is definitely not world-changing at all, you know? It's something totally minor. Just to give the world a little bit more life, make it feel a bit more alive, you know? Yeah, nothing important. Anyway, that's enough for now. I'll see you again next time. Until then, bye.